Hello, welcome to the Desert Blockchain monthly meetup. We are at Gangplank Chandler. My name is Jay Carpenter, and this is going to be a kind of an open session, but we're going to be going over a demo by Anders Brownworth called Blockchain 101, and we've got some people that are joining us. So thanks for tuning in. We've got Raphael who's joining us via Google Hangout. If you'd like to join, you can go to the Meetup page and see where the Hangout link, or you can give us a call. Join us by phone at 602-228-4486. So cool. I'm going to go ahead and let's leave the door open. So let me introduce myself and kind of tell you what I'm interested in, what I'd like to get out of tonight, and go from there. I started looking at blockchain about 2 years ago, and I'm interested in naming, addressing, and numbering. And I'm looking at the blockchain as a way to create sort of a global ubiquitous registry for naming, addressing, and numbering to add harmony to all of our disparate addresses. I've been in the telecom arena for about 20 years, and I've worked at the industry level with the FCC advisory groups, trying to create a harmonization of addressing. And I think that blockchain's an avenue to do something new in that realm. So, and the purpose of the Desert Blockchain events is just to basically build community here in Phoenix and create awareness, create education, and see if we can get kind of some momentum going here locally. So go ahead.
So you want me just to?
Yeah, just
yeah. So my name's Kim Norton. I'm in the financial industry. Blockchain's really interesting. I understand, I guess, conceptually how it works, but I'd like to understand more of the nuts and bolts of the encryption and the deets, and then also how to monetize it, or how I think it's just now being deployed in the cotton industry or something like this, and in supply chain and some other transaction, and how that's actually being done, and how to monetize, but also in like remittances and things like that. Like how could you create a ubiquitous system that for foreign remittances and things like that may or may not be a for-profit thing, that may be some sort of democratized way of providing secure money transfer. That's what I'm interested in, and just learning more technically about how blockchain works.
Have you read any books or
I haven't
experimented with anything around blockchain? Cool. Okay.
Hi, I'm Uday, and I work for United Healthcare, and we are looking into finding out if blockchain could be used in healthcare transactions.
Okay, great.
I'm just starting into it.
Okay, good. Cool. I got to let somebody in, so. Christian, why don't you go ahead?
Quick intro. I'm Christian. I worked for early Bitcoin companies in 2012, 2013 with security. I would hack their websites. I wouldn't steal their Bitcoin, and then I would tell them how to fix it. And that slowly put me into the early stuff of here's how you lock everything down. Here's the standard for it. In the interim, I learned a lot about blockchain because there were a lot of exploits related to the implementation of it.
Actually, let's see this guy.
Want to do intro?
Hey man, let's go.
Oops, we're doing intro.
Back of the shoe.
So, hello. Yes, it is.
Oh,
Welcome.
Popular tonight.
Hey, Jay,
man.
Jay Carpenter.
Yes. You want to pull up a chair?
Well, that's good, right?
Yeah.
I'll have to give you the update on where things
I'm going to
are
pull
at.
up a chair. There's
Playing with Rust.
there are cups down
Very
the
nice.
at the end of the hall,
Very,
and then
very
there's
nice.
a drinking fountain
It's
and
kinda
purified
like
water
Gold
out
invented
in
by
the
Saint
hallway. So have a seat.
Or at least people with good judgment.
So did you introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Elio, you want to introduce yourself?
Hiding out to be the camera. Sure, I'll get in here. So I'm Elio Grieco. I do a number of things. I'm involved with Cybersecurity Canyon, Cyber Warfare Range, educational stuff, several advisory committees,
Howdy.
and working on a
Welcome.
project or several.
Pull up
So
a chair.
trying to redo the
There's chairs
protocols
in
that
the
underlie
other
the
rooms
internet,
if you-
which similar ideas to this, but a little different than what's out there right now, because there's some existing projects I could point to that solve some problems, but don't do it in a way I think that works long term. So
Yeah, cool.
short intro tonight.
All right. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm too big to hear you. So this is the first time here again playing. My career has been in IT, basically systems management. My last gig was with PayPal for 8 years. And I did some contracts. So I've been looking at blockchain. These are some of the topic I've been researching lately: blockchain and semantic web.
Oh, nice. I have not heard that term in a long, long time.
Well,
Happy to
it
hear you
takes
mention
time. Yeah, I know. It's,
There's.
Oh,
kind of plant a seed and wait for 50 years for it to materialize. Anyway, so I'm here to do more research on blockchain and see where this is going.
Okay. Cool. Awesome.
awesome.
Cool. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Carlos Tobin. I work at Cahoots.
Oh, cool.
There you go.
Dragging them over here. So
And what's your interest in blockchain, or where are you at in terms of your knowledge of it, or?
I don't really have a lot of knowledge about the blockchain, but I am interested in the blockchain and how it relates to like fintech.
Okay.
It's sort of why I'm interested in like how can the blockchain be used for sort of distributing the process of lending,
Okay.
loans, distributing the process of making loans, originating loans, and loans on the secondary market.
Okay. Great. Cool.
all right. So did everyone else already doing
Yeah,
that?
I think
Still working away?
we're. If you can go ahead.
Jason Richardson. I met you at the Docker Meetup last week, I think.
Right.
And told you I was going to these meetups, trying to network a little bit and meet people that don't have a primary focus in general, other than technology. The blockchain being a thing that probably hasn't found its full potential yet. So I just interesting. So I'm here to learn and meet people and go from there.
Cool. Jason, do you mind shutting that door now so it's a little more quiet? Raphael, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I can't really hear everyone's voice, but I'm going to try my best. My background is product design. I work in digital currently. Prior to that, I did physical product design. And my interest in blockchain is to just be aware of it to the greatest capacity. And I truly believe it has the ability to democratize and create equality among all individuals. And so I kind of think it's my responsibility to be a part of that change as one who creates digital experiences for small and large businesses. So I met Jay a while back. We did a small project together and was just totally blown away at his knowledge of this technology. So I want to absorb as much as I can. So thanks a lot, Jay, for putting this together.
Cool. Thanks, Raphael. And you're having a hard time hearing us, is that correct?
Just the guys in the back at the end of the
Oh,
table.
okay.
Everyone near the mic, I think, is fine.
Yeah,
but
it's the microphone.
That's
We'll
a
try to
broadcast
speak
mic.
into the microphone a little bit
Well,
better.
It tends to only
Thanks.
record close stuff to it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
broadcast mic. So
If I knew what I was doing with that, we'd be able to pick up everything better. Anyway, so it sounds like a lot of people are kind of brand new to blockchain, and most people have heard about blockchain in the context of Bitcoin. And the comparison that I make is Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is sort of like email was to the internet back in the mid 90s. The cryptocurrency is sort of the first killer app, but email was not all of what the internet was. And cryptocurrency is, as big as it is, it's much, much more. The blockchain is much, much more than just cryptocurrency. In healthcare records, this is an interesting way to handle healthcare records in a brand new way. And there's basically two things that are the primary interesting elements of blockchain. Number one is this peer-to-peer networking. And everything's distributed and open. There isn't a central authority. But number two is the cryptography, because the cryptography pushes the power out to the peers, to all of us. Basically, we now have control of our data, of our money, of our records, of all this, the things that we've relied upon a central authority to manage in the past. So does that kind of paint the picture?
I'm just going to stay quiet unless you unleash me. I mostly agree with what you said, but there's a few slight clarifications. But I'll stay quiet until the end.
Okay.
I want the clarification.
So blockchain. So I'm a
You
big.
don't realize what you just asked.
Yeah, that's right.
So here, I'll get into camera view so people who are not here with us can see me. So
Wait. Should we get a timer on this?
Yeah, we better get it.
it's all right.
That's okay.
I've been asked to give a whole talk on this topic, so you'll be able to see that elsewhere. I'll give the short version.
Well, this is good, and I want to say why this is good is because blockchain's considered a lot of hype in a lot of circles, because the first killer app has been Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's got all sorts of connotations associated with it. The second one was Ethereum, and that's kind of blown up. And blockchain, outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum, there haven't been a whole lot of use cases. And I think one of the opportunities that we have here in Phoenix, if this community grows, is to really experiment with some innovative use cases.
Why do you think there hasn't been any use cases? Is it too young? Is there not enough funding?
Do you want me to go into that?
Like,
No. Before I unleash you,
I'll wait.
this is a very. There are multiple dimensions to this that it's really hard to get your arms around. And
so there's not enough people that have an interest. There's not enough people that are really diving into it.
no, there's a lot of people that are diving into it, but they're dragging the old paradigms into this new paradigm.
So my
They're
argument
trying to.
is that it's not entirely their fault. Part of it is the construct enforces some of that. Is necessarily part of that.
Okay, but
So-
Is there anybody that's building? Is like one of the things that I'm sort of interested in the blockchain. Is,
before you
can you hear me?
somebody else
Yeah.
join. Michael.
No.
Welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Can you hear us, Michael?
You might be on mute.
Yeah, it looks like he's on mute.
You may not even.
Anyway,
Okay.
well, enjoy the show, Michael.
Yeah, enjoy. All right.
One of the things I'm interested in the blockchain is applications that can distribute yield from income producing assets. So you can if you can build something maybe like Ethereum, so that an income producing asset, so the yield from an income producing asset can be distributed evenly around the world, right?
Mhm.
So you sort of automate the process of securitization, and even automate de-risk. Since from my understanding, like if you can get the transaction near zero, then you can possibly decrease the downside of an investment. As
The
low as
transaction
possible.
costs near zero. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, if you could decrease the transfer of stored value to near zero, for instance, like if you have an income producing asset that costs $100,000, you don't need one person to write a $100,000 check. You could have 100,000 people write a $1 check, so to speak, in some sort
Microtransactions.
Yeah. And then even go in and out of that. So even buy and sell that, they're one. So they invest $1 in an asset. And that $1 could be bought on the 1st of the month and sold on the 15th of the month. At the first of the month they have that dollar available, but on the 15th of the month they're not going to have it available. So you could buy it on the 1st. They can get yield on that until the 15th, sell that item, and then buy it back on the 20th.
Yeah.
Right? Buy back into that asset.
It's interesting. Some work has been done, at least when I was doing 2013, 2014, into things like prediction markets, where you're actually buying and selling your stake in a loan that had someone in real time without the other person even knowing. And basically the market would bring about, what is this loan actually worth? What is the risk? And then they would distribute that across the entire network. It never really grew big because every time there was a technical flaw, somebody would rate it and it would fall apart. Or there were often very serious regulations that would come into place and they jumped into the market before they got that lined up. The SEC really doesn't like it when you do stuff like that. Peer to peer.
Yeah, one of the things that I think opens up this opportunity is we're in a realm where I think the regulations might step back and allow this to flourish. So there's a lot of interest from a lot of different countries, and I think more often than not, they're kind of stepping back.
And letting it.
See what
happens.
I was going to make a joke about the new president, but anyway.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank for yourself.
Well, I just had this idea that it's just sort of this concept of if the entire world needs, let's say, $1 trillion in growth credit to grow at X percent. If you use blockchain technology, it seems like it doesn't matter where that $1 trillion comes from.
Not really.
Right? So you can, so currently that $1 trillion comes from people with access, right? You have to, you have to be a customer of Goldman Sachs to access the highest yield investments. So if you're a customer of Goldman Sachs and you have $100 million, you can get access to those high yield investments. But if you can build an application using a blockchain, you can provide access to those investments instead of from the top down, from the bottom up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
now
you can distribute because instead of getting that money from one investor from Goldman Sachs, you can get that money from a million people in Ethiopia or Southeast Asia.
Because right now there's a lot of, it seems like the focus is in financial markets. And so kind of full disclaimer for me, I have absolutely zero interest in financial applications of blockchain. In fact, I don't think blockchain is a good construct computer science wise. There's a blockchain, I'll give the quick version of this.
Let's before you get into the partition
I'm interested in can we use these type of technologies to safeguard human knowledge for a very long, like practically infinite period of time. And I think blockchain makes that extremely difficult without major problems and money.
Difficult to corrupt knowledge?
No. I mean, like blockchain, because it's a chain, that fundamental chain property imposes limitations that other similar constructs don't have. And that means you have to either trim the chain and lose some of that, or it gets huge over time. So if we assume Moore's law will never stop increasing, which it probably will soon, and Kreider's law will also never stop increasing, which at some point it probably will, then you can kind of ignore that and just say, well, we'll always have more processing power and more storage space forever, so that'll never be a problem. But that's probably, like I said, Moore's law is already hitting the wall. That's coming to an end. Kreider's law at some point will probably do the same.
Same for storage. Before you kill the topic of conversation,
I'll wait till the end if you want.
Elio,
I'm gonna let the computer do some work.
I'm gonna do a little screen share and go through, I think, what is a pretty good demonstration.
Big chain setup?
I did not get big chain setup, but I did get. Let's see.
Is that big chain DB?
Yeah, big chain DB.
See, I think if you tackle the financial side of it first, you can allow much more human knowledge to be created.
And that's a fundamental disagreement that Jay and I and a few other people in the blockchain community are having. I think with other constructs, you don't need these artificial. But finance right now.
Wait. Before we get into that,
and I don't think that helps anyone. I mean, it helps a few people make money for doing nothing. But
Raphael, can you see my screen share?
Yes, I can.
Okay, awesome. So let's talk about this is a site that you can go to. Actually, I'm going to go to the site. So you can go to anders.com/blockchain and you can play around with this demo. If you go to the hash, this is a fundamental demonstration of SHA-256 hashing. So if you've got nothing in no data that you're going to hash, this is.
So that's the null hash. Huh?
This is the null hash, the E3B0 blah blah blah. If I put in J, you can see that hash stays the same length, but changes dramatically. So if I erase that, it goes back to the null hash, if you will, as Elio calls it. And then if you put in Elio, it completely changes.
Yeah. And even do something small like changing my capital letter on my name.
Okay, let's change.
Highlight the E and make a lowercase e. So it's
make it an E. And you can see that
now it's E6. It used to be 6B.
That hash has completely changed. So you could have the entire Library of Congress in that space, and if you changed one comma, the entire hash would change.
With one minor limitation. So for every hash function, based on the length of the output hash, there is a certain window where if the hash function is theoretically perfectly designed, every value below a certain size should have its own unique output value. Once you exceed that size, you're going to have collisions because a hash function is fundamentally mapping an infinite number of inputs to a finite number of outputs. Because that length, like Jay was pointing out, that length is always exactly that the hash signature is always the same length. So once you exceed, and it changes by the hash function, once you exceed that, you're guaranteed to have collisions. Now, whether those collisions mean anything, that's a whole nother cryptographic topic. Can you do a pre-image attack? And can I find two things that mean almost the same thing, but one hashes to a value I want to trick you into believing and the other one doesn't? And that's again, getting deep into the cryptography behind cryptographic hashing.
In short, hash is very important to Bitcoin and mining and how to represent data, and the chain references previous hashes of previous data. I'll show you shortly.
Yeah.
But this is not new technology.
Yeah.
The SHA-256 hash has been a secure hash since the 90s or 80s.
Does this go back that far? Wow.
I don't know. It is pretty old, and a lot of bank-level cryptography, when you visit your bank's website, will use something related to SHA-256 hash to fingerprint the certificate they use. So this is not new cryptography. This is old cryptography that they put together to create a blockchain. So hashing is a fundamental piece.
So when you're talking about Bitcoin, because that's most prevalent, and there's transactions going into
A block.
a block.
I'll show
Does
you.
it exceed or reach that limit that you're talking about?
I don't think Bitcoin gets anywhere near that.
So the limit is literally all the possible half of the possible combinations of 0 through
Right,
F.
so how many characters is that?
Yeah, so if you had, it's more molecules than we know about in the universe. It's something on that level. So it's usually a safe assumption to say no one's going to be able to find a collision and forge.
Now, again, that's if
But
the function,
maybe
but now that's if the function is theoretically correct. Some functions, I don't know if anyone's ever proven a hash function mathematically that there's 0 collisions below a certain size.
It would never be
Well,
as long as
here's
So anyway, so
here's
if there are flaws, then you might run into collisions a lot sooner, and that's kind of what happened with 5 and others. So theoretically, there's a certain limit, but then realistically, there can be flaws that are exploitable, and you can do what's called a pre-image attack, which means I can predict what to put in as a pre-image to get the hash checksum that I want.
From a security perspective, SHA-256 is a good pick because if, say, your blockchain depended on it for mining or verification or whatever, and it broke, you would actually not be the most lucrative target. The banks would. And so you would have the flag of, hey, the bank got hacked. This is how they got hacked. And the blockchain.
Interesting practical
There's a lot of good choices made in Bitcoin and other blockchains with the cryptographic primitives so that they are not the most interesting target. The most interesting target are the other people using those.
So you can think of this hash, if I can highlight it. Maybe I can't highlight it.
Apparently not.
Apparently not. Okay, so hopefully you can see my cursor.
That's really stupid. Anyway, you can always open.
Think of this. Imagine yourself on the beach in California, and imagine that you pick up 1 grain of sand off the beach. That grain of sand would be easier to find than this hash if you consider all the other grains of sand on the beach. So the likelihood of you picking up 2 grains of sand that are identical is like nil. And then it even gets deeper than that. It gets down into the, you'd have to find like the same molecule in 2 grains of sand that are randomly distributed on the beach.
Like finding the active ingredient.
But anyway,
homeopathic medicine.
So that's hashing, and hashing is one of the key concepts around this whole construct. Let's go on to the next. What's a block? Well, a block looks like this. A block has a number, and then it has a nonce, which we'll talk about it in a moment. And you'll notice that the hash in this case starts with 4 zeros. The reason it starts with 4 zeros is because of this nonce. This number, the nonce, is a number that makes that SHA-256 algorithm come up with 4 zeros. If I remove 1 digit off that nonce, you see that the entire hash changes, and it no longer starts with 4 zeros. If I add that 8 back in, voila, there's a calculation that's gone on behind the scenes, and now you can see that it starts with 4 zeros. So this is the basic structure of a block. Also, if I change this block number, let's say to 2, now the hash has changed. Now, let me put the 1 back in. If I put a 1 back in, but I add some, hey Linux, if I add some data, all of a sudden the whole thing changes until I do something called mining. When I press this button, there's going to be a behind the scenes test of calculations that will find a nonce to create 4 zeros in the first part of the hash.
4 zeros?
Yep.
Hey Jay, what is the significance of a nonce?
So the nonce is sort of like a magic ingredient.
Do you want me to come in so we don't use
Sure.
the word magic? So yes, it's very similar to salt if you know cryptographic stuff. But what's probably a more appropriate thing to put in this data rather than just J, although it could be anything arbitrary. If we take something like Bitcoin, we could say you pick a JSON data structure, which is just representative of anything, and you can say to.
Oh, you guys just muted yourselves.
Mute myself.
Oh, now it's better. Sorry. I don't know why I muted
Is
it.
that okay? So we could say this is in the block. We are recording this transaction. In actuality, we use several transactions, multiples of these. That would be everything happening in this instant. Now, it doesn't have to be monitored. It could very well be what was traded
be
during
health
that period of
records.
time. It could be health records. Now, the importance of the nonce comes in, so it could be any block. You'd reference the previous block within this data structure. Now, the reason why nonce is important in particular to Bitcoin and many blockchains is because they use a proof of work function to keep someone from overrunning the network. This is like when we call about Bitcoin mining. Now, the nonce, if we just come in with 0 or blank, see it's AE1, if it's 0, it's 8018. We need 4 leading zeros. That's the challenge. It's a cryptographic challenge to get the block included. Again, everyone's racing to solve this challenge. So we don't have 4 zeros. Let's try 1. No 4 zeros. 2. No 4 zeros. 3. No 4 zeros. 4. Let's do that very quickly, automatically. The solution is 72608. If it was blank, apparently this is poorly coded.
No.
It killed all my data. But anyway, you get the point.
Put something in there and hit mine again, and let's see if it changes the nonce later on.
I think that, yeah.
Okay.
It's okay.
When we get into the next,
So the importance of the nonce is in the proof of work function, though. It's not necessarily inherent to a blockchain, but something like the Bitcoin blockchain or anything using proof of work, utilizing a SHA-256 function. The nonce is a random number that you stick in there to make a guess. Is this going to be the solution? Is this going to give me the number of zeros I need to win the lottery of who gets to include the block?
But the zeros, just for demonstration purposes here.
It's literally zeros in Bitcoin. It could be anything, though. You could say who can get the
1,
most
2, 3, 4,
who can get the most consecutive 1, 2, 3s in the string.
yeah,
That could be the challenge, but that would be kind of silly. Leading zeros are actually very easy to check, especially for something like an ASIC or some
Right.
integrated circuit. They go, how many leading zeros is in this, however big the integer is. Huge.
there is more computational power in the Bitcoin community than in Google, Apple, Amazon, all of them combined.
Now,
If they tried to hash
I was
things
going to say
quickly.
there's one caveat to that.
He said that,
What's that?
He said that.
The computational power that constitutes the Bitcoin community worldwide exceeds Google, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, all of them combined.
Yeah, there's a large asterisk that Christian is pointing out, though. If you care about computing to SH22, if you care about doing anything else, there's very little computational
Yeah,
power.
specialized
The bulk of
computers
it
are
are
trying to solve it.
basics, like you said. Right?
Exactly.
It only
all
does-
they can ever do is hash.
That computing power does one thing and one thing
So
only.
just
two things.
to get an idea of the
Birds of
scale we're
electricity.
talking with these guesses, though, and this computational power, essentially doing the SHA-256 hash, or whatever you use for your proof of work. Right now, the Bitcoin network, last time I was there in 2013 or 14, the miners were measured, these miner boxes were measured in terahashes. Now that's many, many millions of calculations, guesses a second. And people would line these up as far as they could stack them in data centers in China and off to the races. So, that
So
was
the
in
nonce is the
2014.
output, right?
The nonce is the random number you stick into the data set to hopefully get the number of zeros that you need to include
You
your
mix
block.
it with the data that you're,
Mhm.
Mixed with the number of transactions you want to include.
Right.
If you're an evil miner, you don't include any
whatever's in your data,
transactions.
you mix your nonce and compute the hash, basically.
Now that is
And then you
not
try again until you get them zeros.
Yeah.
So let's,
Ethereum wants to use proof of stake. Proof of
Right.
stake would forego this cryptographic
Proof-
puzzle in exchange for something else.
proof of stake is like a deposit that you would put up. And to reach consensus at the community level, you've got to put your deposit at risk. And if you do something funny, you could lose your deposit.
Yeah, there is one other.
But let's continue. Let's get through this demonstration quickly, and then I
Just a
think
quick question, is the nonce guaranteed to provide, to get you just one hash starting with 4 zeros? Or
Absolutely.
does he get the first one that produces 4 zeros?
It's everyone is racing to figure out what the nonce is, what the data set they have to get the number of zeros. Now, the nonce is limited in size, so you might get to the limit of the nonce. Because right now, I think they're like 14 leading zeros. It's very, very like hard to solve for Bitcoin. So what they tweak instead of the nonce is they either include a new transaction or they pull a transaction out, which would change the data, and they can start from 0 again. Or they can even just change the timestamp in the data 1 second and then start from 0 again on the nonce all the way up to the limit of the size. So there is a lot of room for that guess until they get the right one. And there's no single answer. Someone could get a nonce with a number of zeros, and someone can get a second nonce with a number of zeros. As long as the leading zeros are there, that's what solves the puzzle. It's not what follows after those.
And that was your question, is could you find two hashes that had 4 leading zeros? And the answer is yes, with two different nonces.
Sequentially, and somebody can search in some other order, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's whoever finds it first in the problem.
And that just it leads to a weird race condition. The key is for it to be very hard, because then it makes the race condition unlikely. But if you Google something like orphaned blocks blockchain, that's a case of a miner solved it and another miner solved it at the same time. They both broadcast it. Now there's a fork of the network briefly. But why that's not a big deal is they're both incentivized to include the same exact transactions. So the network is still, in its integrity, kept in whole. And that sort of does some condition tolerance stuff. Anyway,
So that's the fundamentals of a block. Now if we click the next tab, and you could do this by going to this this URL. But if you now go to the blockchain, you can see that we start with the number 1 block. This is the 0 or null nonce. And we start with a 0, 0, all zeros. Previous hash doesn't matter, but go ahead.
First block is special because there is no previous block to reference. You can't
Right.
say, hey, I'm starting a blockchain, here's where it started out as. I guess you could. It's called pre-mining now, but
That's true.
In Bitcoin, it's called the Genesis block, and that, hey, there is no previous block behind me. This is the very start of my blockchain. It's actually a very special thing to have that there. It's a very unique edge case, and it only happens once on a network.
Yeah. So this is the Genesis block, and somebody's found this nonce that creates this 4 leading zeros hash. Then they take this hash, bring it into the next block as the starting point for block number 2, and with no data in the block, it results in this hash, which also has 4 zeros. And so forth. So you can see that this, if you just look at the last 4 digits, are the same as this starting hash carried over to block number 3, and then this with nothing in the data field.
Your destination is on the right.
You're here.
Yeah, you're already here. So just for the fun of it, let's put in some information here. All of a sudden you can see that the calculation changes.
And notice that this thing referencing the previous hash, type another letter there. Not only does this hash have to change, but everything following it, referencing it, now its hash changes because this data is changing, which would change this hash. So if you try to change something earlier in the chain, you have to also have a solution for every single block that follows. That's why in Bitcoin, if you want a secure transaction, you wait for a specific number of confirmations, meaning I want 3 blocks ahead of when you sent me that money to make sure that you don't have enough power to try to fork the network.
Yeah.
So,
and remember that point, because that's going to play into Elio's comments a little bit later.
But yeah, key thing, everything else after it has to change because everything references the previous thing.
Now,
That's what makes it a chain.
let's ignore chain block number 4. But if I wanted to mine this block now, and I press mine, all of a sudden it did clear it.
Well, again, they're not going to have a rig actually mining every time you click. You know how expensive that would be?
You can, yeah, but you could just do 1 0. JavaScript is
Anyway.
totally capable of mining. I've done it.
Yeah, but they're not going to do.
I was working on my forfeit.
Yeah, it was working on mine too. I don't know what's going on. But let's mine this. Let's mine this last block. So our goal is to press this button, have the calculation go on behind the scenes, and produce a hash at the bottom with 4 leading zeros. And it cleared the block. Or did it clear the block? Whoops.
So the only reason it's clearing the data is because it's a programming mistake by this demo. That's not normal.
Well, it works in other places.
Yeah.
So
Is it actually supposed to put in the new mining stuff in this one, or is it just?
no, it does work. I don't want to take the
Do
time
you have
to.
it running on local host?
I do have it running on localhost. So here it's running on localhost.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
let's go to blockchain. Let's go to here, and we'll do J, and then we'll do mine.
This one is
And
actually working.
this one actually works.
Oh, this is reaching out to the note app in the background.
Okay,
Very good.
so it actually.
Or does it?
What happened?
Oh,
It is calling out though to the server to do the mining.
I'm going to try that one more time, then we're not going to waste any more time on it. Because I did get it to work.
It works for me, Jay. I'm doing it on my own home computer.
Yeah,
Okay,
get out local host, switch over to Anders. Maybe his is working. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
this
missed
wasn't
that.
working. Okay. It will work. I don't know why it's not working on
It's
this.
the worst part about live demos.
Yeah, live demos. It's the live demo demon. So now we're in the distributed tab, and here what he shows, and you can play around with this at home, but he shows that all these chains which could be running on different machines anywhere in the world have to all agree. And if one does not agree, if you've changed a comma or any character way back in the chain, then that final hash is not going to agree with the rest of the peers. And this is part of the consensus mechanism. So
Makes it very hard to change something in the ledger in the
Yeah.
past. Very, very, very difficult.
very difficult. And then if we go to the tokens tab, now you can see what this looks like when you're actually including like financial transactions. So basically all these peers, peer A, B, and C, and D, have the same set of financial transactions, and they're calculating the same hash throughout the chains, and they all have to. That's not good. They all have to agree. Damn.
Thank you, Macros.
So this shows
So is
you.
the peer, is this already set up? Are all the peers set up? Or when you do a blockchain, you have to set up the peers?
Peers are literally anybody who wants to.
Anybody who
that has
wants to
access
play.
the code. Now, what you could do if you wanted a private blockchain is you could encrypt every peer's communications in a special key that everyone has to have, and you hide that. Or what's actually a more interesting thing is if you're okay with it being in plain text and out in the open, you could just hide what the cryptographic challenge actually is, and then the peers that know it are the authorities on what is actually going to the ledger. But everyone else can join in and check with all the other peers that, hey, yeah, this block is valid because the cryptographic puzzle was solved according to them. So you can keep that piece of proprietary.
Are like there peer groups that are being created for certain types of blockchains?
Every single blockchain typically would have its own peer group. If you want Ethereum, you get the Ethereum client, you run it on your computer,
Okay.
you just join the Ethereum network as a peer. You can mine. So you could run the client and it'll download the blockchain, and you could run the client with the flag to mine, I think is how it works, how it worked with Bitcoin. And not only would it download the blockchain, but as soon as it got all of it, it would then try to solve whatever the cryptographic puzzle is. With Ethereum, it's actually not a simple cryptographic puzzle. It's also performing the computations to move the giant computer that Ethereum is forward one step, and also a small cryptographic puzzle. So
So the last tab is where you're starting with a certain number of coins. The coin base for Anders is 100, and then he's spending them among different people, different transactions.
these are what real transactions actually sort of look like.
Yeah, and this. So here you've got 3 peers, I think.
Notice that what's important down there too, you'll notice that, can you scroll all the way down to peer C? Did I misread that? Come on, Mac. Yeah, okay, it's fine. See, in the Genesis block, you would typically have no transactions because the network did not exist prior to it. There are no transactions to include. You would only have the Coinbase. The Coinbase is typically the reward that you get for selling a block, I think. That's what that references. But I could be wrong.
Could be.
Yeah, so you notice
Anyway.
Anders is the winning miner, so every time he wins the block, he's getting $100. But it's also including these transactions. So.
You can go to this demo, and I was playing around with the code since I'm running around in localhost. I added an extra 0 just to feel powerful. And but anyway, this video I think does a great job of explaining the demo and showing you how to play around with it. What I think might be handy right now is to show you the coin market cap.
Oh, God. Have you seen Bitcoin recently?
Well, it's deflationary.
So just to give you an example, this is a site called CoinMarketCap where you can see the price of and total market cap of various cryptocurrencies. So Bitcoin currently, the total market cap of all the top 100 cryptocurrencies is 17.7 billion, of which 15.6 billion consists of Bitcoin.
That's the USD.
Yes.
Right. And
So where's the other billion? What was the difference?
well, so the difference is that
Like about 1 billion?
the approximately 2 billion is like Ethereum's 673 million, Litecoin 225 million.
This is simply the number of Bitcoin or Ethereum or Litecoin circulating multiplied by the current exchange rate at any given moment. They call that the market cap. Now, that's relatively naive because if you suddenly sold 10 million Bitcoin, the price would actually go way down, and that wouldn't be the real market cap. But this is a good gauge of roughly the value of each of these coins relative to each other.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And then
which is really impressive until you look at actual global GDPs and stuff, and I realize those are well into the trillions.
Each one of these are their own peer network, their own implementation of a blockchain. Typically, their own implementation of a cryptographic puzzle. Almost nobody copies Bitcoin because they wouldn't be unique otherwise. Litecoin is literally the same thing as Bitcoin, just with a different cryptographic puzzle. It's not SHA-256, it's script.
Isn't that non-deflationary?
No,
Maybe the other tweaks?
mining is the same thing. Block speed is lowered, or it's faster.
Faster, but I thought it was also non-deflationary.
Augur is a prediction market.
Yep. Ripple was supposed to be a peer-to-peer sort of lending system and a way to settle debts without actually trading money.
Which one is it?
It's called Ripple. The Ripple 1.0 was intended to be that. Ripple 2.0 was just another coin, more or less. Zcash
is supposedly anonymous.
Zuko. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin and most of these blockchains are not anonymous because this blockchain is public. To participate and know everything's valid, you need to have the full ledger or access to it, which means everyone has copies of every single transaction that ever happened on the entire network. Now, people who want anonymity, that's not necessarily desirable. And a lot of people assumed, oh, I'm using Bitcoin, I'm anonymous, which is incorrect. It's kind of, you can track where every Bitcoin has been, but you don't know exactly who had it. But once you tie it to an identity, you can follow it back down.
Yeah. There are a couple of federal agents in jail right now because they hadn't quite figured that out.
Yeah. And by the way, you're right. It has 4 times more total coins in Litecoin. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, for their proof of work, they're actually using script.
That's what I said, script.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Monero, I think, is also supposedly anonymous, but I don't quote me.
So what's the total market cap of all the coins?
Of all the top 100 cryptocurrencies is $17.7 billion. And
How do you get around the memory requirement?
So
is there a bug in the implementation?
But the available supply is a different number, right?
the available supply, there will only be a maximum of 21 million Bitcoins. And the speed at which they're being issued is slowing down. I think it's 2040 is when the
Is
last.
that a hard cap?
It's a hard cap. That's part of.
There's no way that can be overridden by implementation.
If it's overridden, then it's no longer Bitcoin. So that's one of the key points to this whole realm
That's
is
sort of like their way of keeping it on, is sort of like the gold standard. Is that a similar analogy? Like to keep the inflation out of.
well, that's the idea. But well, we're talking about a key concept among all these cryptocurrencies is what are the rules that constitute the community and the coin.
And there's lots of different rules that can come into play, such as how hard is the mining? At what rate does the mining get harder? The difficulty curve, so to say. And how is that determined? The speed, and that inherent to those is the speed that blocks can come in. How quickly can the ledger add new pages or blocks? So Bitcoin is about every 15 minutes. You have to wait 15 minutes to know that your transaction concluded. Litecoin is about a minute. 2.5 minutes, sure.
So the available supply is kind of like
the other things you can change is what is stored. It doesn't necessarily have to be money. It could be DNS records. So there's something called
Could be health records.
Could be health records. If you want an example of naming in its infancy, this is like a year after Bitcoin was made, alongside Litecoin. There's something called Namecoin that came out, which was its own coin, but on the blockchain also was, I claimed this name, .namecoin or whatever, and these are the records. This is my phone number. This is my address. This is that.
Yeah. It's like DNS.
Is there
only
any
on the
projects that
blockchain.
are sort of duplicating a central bank?
Duplicating a central bank?
Sort of, are there any?
So what makes the blockchain very interesting is its ability to run sort of on its own, assuming consensus can be met in implementation. As soon as you bring in a centralized bank, so to say, you kind of lose the appeal for a blockchain. If there's one centralized bank, you might as well remove the cryptographic puzzle and give them a signature.
Well, then that wasn't the question. Is there blockchains that are sort of duplicating the functions of a central bank,
Yes.
but in a distributed fashion?
So I was going to
Well,
say,
that's what that's what Bitcoin is. What you're witnessing, what we're playing around with, are sort of like creating virtual sovereignties.
Yeah. Now, before we leave that topic, though,
Bitcoin's
I want to
currency.
get your take on this. One of the things that we've seen with Ethereum was the first one to really ram it down everyone's throats. But this idea that you can have a decentralized thing that stays decentralized is not really true. Because what happened with Ethereum is they're like, code is law and law is code and all this other fancy bullshit. It's not true. And so they said, we're going to make this thing where you can put contracts in here and you can execute contracts, and whatever the code, whatever the chain says and the code within the chain says is the truth, trademark. Yeah. And so what some guy did was he has a brilliant attack.
You
It was a
divided by zero.
recursive attack.
Oh, well.
And every time this contract got executed, it would fork off 2 more executions and transfer a little bit of money to this other account. And very rapidly, they have this thing they're calling the DAO, or the Decentralized Anonymous Organization. And the idea was we could all put a little bit of money in, and then we would use everyone's knowledge together to make decisions about what this big organization that everyone had just put in a few bucks in, that now has millions of dollars, what they would decide on. And they would decide on the smartest thing because it's all these people together. And he drained several $1 million out of that really
Like
quickly.
50 million.
Yeah, I think that was before. But what they did, they're like, whoa, the law, code is law, but we didn't mean that. So they ended up rewinding the chain in the software, like 3 guys.
Now, just to be clear,
rebuilding on that.
they did not go into the chain, rewind it, and then make that a mandate. You had to go download a new client to join their second blockchain. And that's why on CoinMarketCap, there's Ethereum, which is the one the developers forked because they thought, oh, it was hacked, even though it was following code. That's not what we intended in a devalued currency. They forked it, took the guy's money back, and refunded it to everybody who invested in the flawed product. But Ethereum Classic still exists, which is people still running the one where code is law. Yeah, so when we say it's
Yeah.
decentralized, but everybody has to follow the same rules, this was a rule change. It's called a hard fork. We're changing the rules of the network. What he did is not allowed. That block's invalid. We're going back to this point, and there's a new block that refunds everybody. That was the new rules.
So they forked the ledger, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
everyone who wanted to agree with that would download the client, agree to those new rules by getting the client, joining that network, and using that currency. Essentially, what they did was there's Ethereum, and now there's two separate Ethereums.
So could you run, like, say you had a wallet before it forked?
Yes.
You can run a wallet on both instances.
There's a
You're the only
massive
one who has the
security
key
hazard.
to that. Yeah, so you have now twice as much.
So I know
which
some.
may be worth half as much. But
I know some black hat guys. So there's Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. Coinbase is one of the biggest brokers to buy Bitcoin and Ethereum in the U.S. I know a black hat guy who figured out there would be value on both ends of this. So he ran two separate clients and would send a certain type into Coinbase, cash it out, and then send the second type into Coinbase and cash it out. And Coinbase didn't catch on for a day or two. And he was just doubling his money for the entire period of time. So hard forks are very dangerous. You have to be very careful if you ever do them. A hard fork in Bitcoin has only happened 6 or 7 times, and almost always in its infancy. When you get a really big network like Ethereum, everyone notices when you do it.
I thought they were all soft forks.
No, they've had many hard forks. They had one integer overflow where some guy mined a block and suddenly had billions of Bitcoin, and they were like, "Oh, that was definitely a mistake. Let's take that out of the code and start over there." So things like that do happen.
So if
what's the difference between a soft and a hard? Soft is unintentional.
A soft is literally the proof of work still functions. People looking at the block with the old client will say, well, yeah, that's valid. It's valid enough. It follows the rules I was given. It might be doing some extra stuff, but it's still following rules. It's still solving the same cryptographic puzzle. It's still got data. Maybe it's got metadata, but the data that's important is still there. That's okay. So the newer clients can do all this cool stuff like side chains or whatever. That's not dumb, but as an example, the old stuff will recognize the transactions, but cannot also participate in those side functions. But anyone using the old one can still send their money and receive money, so it's okay.
But it still takes some form of consensus, whether it's a soft or hard fork.
No. Soft fork is everyone still following the same rules. Someone's adding some extra stuff in, but they're not breaking the rules by doing it. And if you want to be able to understand what the new stuff is and utilize it, you have to jump in. A hard fork is literally, if you're on an old client and there's a new guy, and one guy mines a block, this guy will say that's not a valid block at all. Or this guy will say that is a valid block, but this guy will never recognize the other guy's block. So you get these competing heads and forks, and it's a little bit of a nightmare.
So if we go back to this distributed, and all of a sudden this peer C decided, I want to go off on my own path, then on block number 6, they might do some totally different change, like increase the number of Bitcoins to 42 million from 21. But now they're off on their own, and they've got to get a whole community to agree with them for that to be worth anything.
I don't know if you could actually do that without rewriting code, increase the number, because isn't the limit defined by...
The limit is defined as one of the rules of the blockchain. How inflationary or deflationary is the currency? What is the rules that would create new currency or take it out of circulation?
Yeah.
Those are all different sets of rules.
But the number of Bitcoin is defined by some pattern in the hash.
Yeah, it halves every approximately 4 years. So it started at 100, then it was 50, then it was 25, and today it's 12.5 coins in my block.
Can the inflationary number be dynamic, or does it have to be static from the very beginning? Like,
What's important is you set the rules in place in a way that's consistent across every client. You can have any arbitrary rule you want. You could say every other block is 6 coins, and the odd numbers get 1 coin. That's fine. That you could say they never go up dynamically; they're static. It's entirely up to you as the person implementing the blockchain, writing that section of the code.
So right now in the Bitcoin community, somebody is making about $12,500 every 10 minutes.
Yeah, right. That's a minor.
Yeah.
And they're probably in China.
And they're probably in
Statistically
China.
speaking, about 80% of them are in China.
So
Is that a problem?
is that because electricity is like subsidized, or?
yeah.
Yeah, the people who win are the people who can get a hold of the manufacturing process for the ASICs, the first people to make ASICs. ASICs are literally chips you put data in and it spits out a hash as fast as you possibly can. they used to use graphics cards because those were good at doing large scale calculations. And then people made specialized computers called ASICs for it. And all these big coins usually have ASICs, except Ethereum may not have it for a portion.
So, what other questions do you guys have before we let Elio loose on?
I'm really curious.
Chewing
What other
this
functions
up.
are there aside from financial?
So you can store anything you want. Sorry.
Like,
Yeah, go ahead.
I know there's like IPFS and the big chain.
IPFS is not a blockchain, but you can represent a
The
blockchain with
distributed
IPFS.
data.
Yeah, and I find IPFS pretty interesting. It has a few flaws for certain use cases, but actually I'm quite interested in IPFS.
I moved the Bitcoin blockchain to IPFS for fun. It was not difficult. It was literally like everything's already content addressed, everything already uses hashes, so just point at the previous one and stick it on
Yeah.
there. I really messed up their network when I did it because they weren't ready for it, but yeah,
that's pretty
it's
fun.
total possible.
This is particularly in your case for the health records. IPFS is a very interesting protocol to store health records in a completely different way that might have some very advantageous.
There's one big, you have to understand though how it works.
Yeah.
Because IPFS, so my gripe with IPFS is it is the perfect system for public data that is unencumbered with copyright, patent, anything else.
Unless
It's
you
great
encrypt
for
that. You can encrypt it on the network.
Well,
There's still
they
correlation
are
with
working.
issues.
They are working on private channels now.
Okay.
So
Well, and everything peer-to-peer is encrypted by default. You can limit what the peers you are that you trust. But
Yeah, but it tries to heal. It tries to heal a partition aggressively.
So
Well,
Elio, you wanna rip
hang on.
apart?
I wanted to go into IPFS. IPFS is, you can store content anywhere you can get it. It's kind of like BitTorrent, but more extensible, I would say. The piece that you want that is a blockchain is literally anything you would keep in a ledger. If you want to do phone numbers, you need to have identity of why everyone owns each phone number at the start. That's the rules of your blockchain. And what are the rules for transferring those phone numbers, the data that goes into the block. So Namecoin is everyone gets currency, they trade the currency, and you can throw some currency away to claim a name. For health records, you would be putting in such and such had this procedure, such and had this procedure, and maybe each hospital network would have their own blockchain that could talk to the other blockchains. And everything on IPFS, you would stick the health records encrypted, right? But the ledger that points to those encrypted records would be a blockchain, so it's immutable. No one could come in and change it later. You could also not just put in people's health records, but who accessed what health records at a certain time. HIPAA would really love that, right? HIPAA regulations. I'm trying to think of everyone else's.
Why are you excited about the blockchain? Like, what application would you like to see built, or what would you like?
I'm not the
Like
person to
50
ask.
years from now, 100 years from now,
I have
what would you-
full technical understanding of what a blockchain is. I can kind of tell when somebody doesn't understand what they're talking about with it. I've sort of implemented my own when it was interesting.
How would you like to change?
Me in particular, I have no dream. My dream was actually Bitcoin came around. I said, holy crap, this is amazing. I made my money on that. I got out of it when it got weird. And that was me in 2014.
Well, Jay, what about you?
I'm the dreamer.
Jay's
What
the
would,
dreamer.
I'm the guy on
you like
drugs.
to see in the future, and why?
Well, first of all, this is a democratization of trust. So anybody in the world that's got even a texting cell phone can be part of this. It opens up commerce. It creates a level playing field where anybody in the world that's got a feature phone, which is the old texting feature phone, can actually create a business and their own livelihood using this construct.
And the biggest, awesomest proof of concept so far is Bitcoin. This is literally a decentralized currency that's very hard to take down by any authority. It's backed by nothing but the full faith of the people using it and what they're willing to trade for it, which sounds stupid and insane and impossible. And in the first year or two, I definitely thought, oh, this is monopoly money. I was amazed when it traded for $5 a coin. Now it's up to 1,000. It's not a joke anymore, right? When it traded at 100, it was not a joke anymore. This is real. If it didn't have value, it would go to zero and blockchain would be garbage. So if we can put finances on there, if we can trade arbitrary numbers around, why not trade around health records or anything else we can keep a ledger on?
I don't totally agree with you that it's hard to take down. It's
Yeah,
hard
80% of China owns it. China could probably take it down by record.
to take down
You'd
their
have to have
website,
all
but
of
not hard.
China.
All of China
collaborate
could
together.
mine. Say the Chinese government said it's illegal, they would take all their mining resources, mine blocks, but include no. And that's it.
That's
There's no more.
one approach. There's multiple
There's
ways to
other
shut
ways
down
to do it,
Bitcoin. It's
sure.
both legislative stuff. There's a lot of ways to take down Bitcoin.
But if you're
So-
going
So
into
what,
Here's-
Jay, what are some use cases
Here's a use case.
that you would like to see in the future?
Here's a use case. This is a story that came out today. Zimbabwe, which has
Hyperinflation.
hyperinflation. They use the Zimbabwe dollar as toilet paper. There are signs saying do not flush the Zimbabwe dollar because it'll clog the toilet.
That's not even good toilet paper. That's depressing.
So here's a story about how Bitcoin Accelerator could provide a lifeline to Zimbabwean women farmers.
Did you catch the other story about, was it Venezuela? Bitcoin in Venezuela? So
No.
Venezuela.
Oh yeah,
Which is also in hyperinflation.
Well,
hyperinflation.
and-
India, where they
States-
killed off all those bills, a lot of people moved to Bitcoin while that was happening.
Well, the other thing is they subsidize electricity. So it's illegal to mine Bitcoin, but since electricity is free, if you could just buy the computer hardware, you basically get free money. Most people
Yeah.
have to trade electricity. They have to either put in generation or they have to pay someone else to generate it. But in Venezuela, that cost of the electricity gets, amortized across the rest of the population. So you individually basically get free money
Mhm.
because you're making everyone else pay for your
I think
electricity.
I think they've
So-
jailed 4 miners in Venezuela.
Yeah.
and
So it's illegal because of that.
And it was possible to do that with Bitcoin in the early days. In 2012, I used my GPUs to mine, I don't know, something like
yeah.
5 Bitcoin a day because that's what you would mine back in 2012 with consumer
Yeah.
level GPUs. And I had my electricity from free from my landlord. So it's like, cool, let's set up 5 computers to do that.
Yeah.
So
Free money.
in terms of the dream, what's possible here? Back in 1995, we used to use the telephone like this. We would call up. We didn't even have cell phones. People would pass around a receiver. That's how we communicated. And then all of a sudden, the internet came along and this email thing happened. And people were going, well, why do I need email when I can make a telephone call? But the democratization of communications via the internet just opened up a whole new realm of things that we couldn't even imagine then. This is a similar construct in my view. Only this, because the internet initially was like a North American construct and maybe Europe. This is instantly global. 7.3 billion people now, or in short order, the ones that, there are some people that don't have any kind of internet connectivity. But if you can imagine a world that has internet connectivity or cell phone connectivity, and all of a sudden everybody has like an equal playing field. That's what's amazing about this. And all the centralized institutions that we used to rely upon, all of a sudden have a competitor in terms of this global community construct. Another example is, it used to be, when I was in grade school and I had a report due, I would go to the World Book Encyclopedia and I would do research, which meant I would copy whatever it said and turn that in. But that encyclopedia was a centralized authority where a certain number of PhDs and whatever would write that. Now we have Wikipedia, which is a community construct, and there's a contention. If I write something that everybody disagrees with, that can be erased. It's part of the history, but it can be erased. So what Wikipedia did to our knowledge repositories, the blockchain is doing to everything where we've relied upon a central authority. Banks, title registries, governments, insurance companies, all this stuff is on the table now.
Ethereum is very ambitious in the sense they wanted to put a Turing-complete computer that ran on blockchain, proof of work, and eventually proof of stake, which means you can run any arbitrary program within the blockchain and have a record of all the previous states it kept. Which means if Ethereum was successful and somebody could figure out how the hell it actually works and make something nice, you could put health records on Ethereum. You could put, there's ways to reference IPFS already from Ethereum. Nobody has really figured it out. It's been several years. It's really unfortunate.
Forked, right?
So the big killer app of Ethereum to be was the DAO, which is a decentralized way to fund contracts. Essentially, someone would put forth a contract, there were rules set in place within this DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, as it's supposed to be. Anyone could join as a member of it, put money into it, and then fund contracts, and then receive back whatever anyone else paid into it after they take out the loan from it. It's a very big deal. There's a ton of stories around on it. Remember how we said Ethereum forked?
Right.
It's because of that thing. They coded it bad. Someone bought millions of dollars worth of Ethereum, went into that. Some guy figured out how to drain it. It was already apparent when it first launched that there were issues. Someone figured out how to trick it, drain the money out of it. Ethereum was doing its job, but the DAO was coded poorly, and there you go. But if you coded something bulletproof on Ethereum and the network was well written, you could store anything arbitrary, any arbitrary program on Ethereum.
Are they still shooting for that goal?
What other goal do they got? That's the whole point of the damn thing.
So this fellow, when he was 19, which was in 2013, Vitalik Buterin, when he was 19, wrote a paper, a white paper, that turned into Ethereum. And Ethereum, inside of 30 months, had a market capitalization in excess of $1.5 billion.
And how much of that is
You notice it's half that now.
Yeah.
How
like
much
how
of
much of
it's
that is
capped?
kept?
Oh, kept. Well,
Like 10% is.
it's, I'm not sure
Kept by the
exactly.
guy who made it, you mean? It's so one nice thing about it is everyone can see the code, so they know the amount that was pre-mined, so to say. In Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto, you could see the blocks that he mined, so you know he got several hundreds of Bitcoin early on, but he made the network public at the start. Ethereum did a thing where you could fund portions of Ethereum, and they would give you Ethereum right when the network started to get it rolling, so to say. But
To pay for the.
But really,
use
it
of-
was sort of a pre-mine. But it was in the ledger. So they got to keep whatever they said was in the Genesis block. And
He
whatever.
he probably made at least 10 million and maybe 20 or 30 million, and who knows, maybe more.
So
This-
it's like, so it's not 10%, it's less. It's 1 or
Well,
2.
If he
it's
held
hard
10%
to,
of
it's
the
hard to
Ethereum
say.
on the network, then yeah, he would. Odds are, knowing Vitalik, he sold it.
He
probably-
sold at least 25% of his holdings,
At least.
like about a year ago.
To fund his operation.
To have himself a nice time.
So here's another example. This is Steam, and there was a recent podcast on epicenter.tv, and Steam just launched, I believe it was this year. And when it launched, it had a market cap shortly after the launch of $400 million. And now it has receded to 35 million. So fortunes are being made and lost in this
Now,
ecosystem.
might I remind everyone that Madoff made a
That's
fortune
right.
too, and didn't waste as much electricity. So far, what we've seen these chains, these cryptocurrencies being used for is massive speculation, and people have made a fuckload of money off them. But as far as like global utility, we have yet to really see that happen. There's a lot of promise, but very little actual realization.
Well, if you want
With
a
the-
dark
well,
market, it's
so-
terrific.
Well, yeah.
If you want to sell
buy
drugs on the
and all this
internet,
shit.
it's great.
Or ransomware. is
Well,
actually
ransomware is a big
I was going
problem.
to say an interesting application that is, I mean,
But why is that? Why haven't we had applications beyond speculation?
Well, here's the reason why is because a lot of people are trying to do things in the old way, like this is a database. They're not taking into account the transparency. They're not taking into account the open source nature of it, and they're not taking into account the power that the currency plays within this thing.
I was going to say
'Cause I don't-
an interesting application that has been done. Sorry, but I'm going to forget otherwise. MaidSef Coin. I don't think it's ever going to be finished, but its whole point in the white paper is relatively solid. Decentralized proof of storage. You put stuff out there for everyone to store, and everyone who's storing it are the miners, and they're given puzzles that prove that they are still storing your thing.
They were the ones with that crazy
Yeah.
triple helix. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
it's a lot of this.
So that's storage, arbitrary storage. Here's a 1 terabyte file. Prove to me that you're still storing it 20 years later. Okay, you can get some extra
Yeah.
coin.
I gotta say, their data structure internally, we got to meet them at a conference. It is awesome.
It's also 3 years old. They haven't finished it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In theory, the theory behind it means you could like totally lose tremendous amounts of data, and it would be able to fully reconstruct every bit of like massive sections of missing chain based on it, which is pretty impressive.
The three of us went to an event in San Francisco called the Decentralized Web Summit
You should
in
pull up the site
early June.
so people can see it. If you have time, I recommend you go there and watch some of the videos. They recorded most of the tracks. They had some really good people there.
A lot of Ethereum talks.
A lot of IPFS. They dominated the conference. They had pretty much anyone doing cutting edge research in this space and related devices. 300 people globally that showed up, and it was quite good.
So this basically was a gathering of about 300 people at this church called the Internet Archive. The people that invented the web and the people that are inventing what's next in the web. And it was amazing. So like Elio said, there's some incredible talks, and I highly recommend you guys watch
It
this.
seems to me like I mean, I don't know if it's 100 years in the future or whatever, but it seems like blockchain or a blockchain has the power to completely reverse the income equality gap around the world. And
Not necessarily.
like,
Well,
if we go down your road, it just seems like, you know, when people, if we give access,
Let's
we
be
give
real
equal
clear.
access to
Let's
all
be real
7 billion
clear
people in the
though.
world, it can quickly turn the.
Let's be real clear. The income inequality issue is not a technical problem. That is a moral issue. Trying to solve moral issues with technical solutions is doomed to fail because they don't work. You can't solve one with the other. We could solve income inequality right now if you felt like it. Throwing technology at it won't actually do that. Unless you invent robot overlords that enforce sharing of income, technology will not
Isn't that
solve
what the
it.
blockchain
So-
is? It's
Well-
basically a robot overlord. Like,
Well,
No.
the
like if you
I think-
if you build a blockchain and code it,
Bitcoin's interesting because it would replace something like the US dollar in the sense of like, who knows how much the Fed is printing every day? We don't know. How much is Bitcoin printing every day? We know it's 12 and a half coins every day. We can go all the way back to the
Every
very
10
first
minutes.
Bitcoin ever. It's supposed to be 15. But going all the way back to the very first thing, we know how many are in circulation. Some might be lost. We wouldn't know. They're stuck. But we
Is
know.
there a percentage
It's-
of that? The lost
Nobody would know. If Satoshi never comes back, like 12% is gone.
Well, there's actually a great article. There are ways, even within the protocol, if no one loses a key, that Bitcoin does evaporate over time.
Mhm.
There are ways to lose blocks like irreparably. Just that Bitcoin is never. No one will ever touch that again. I'll have to dig that article.
Oh
out.
yeah, bad transactions you can get them stuck. I used to burn coins for fun and put messages on the blockchain, vulgar things.
so let's
it just
What-
seems like
what-
the blockchain has the potential to bypass, disintermediate
Mhm. A lot of
financial institutions. Like it can disintermediate the central bank.
Well, when the internet appeared, many people were predicting the demise of the legacy telecoms, and it didn't happen. I think that the banks will start to modify their operations around this construct. There are 3 things that are a key part of this ecosystem. One is the technology, which Elio is saying, you know, it's this to bring wealth to all people around the world. It's not just the technology. 2 is the business models, and 3 is the policy. So the real innovation potential is around the policy, I think, number one, and number two is the business models.
And those are both divorced from the technology.
Well, I say
I will give you that there are certain business models that may be much more difficult with previous technology, although there are alternate technologies that could allow them. But yes, those two are not intrinsically tied to blockchain.
They're not intrinsically tied to blockchain, but just like the internet opened up new business opportunities that in some cases replaced the legacy businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And it also opened up new dynamics around governance and policy. This is a construct that's doing the same thing.
And if you think back to the early days of the internet, nobody knew what it was going to be used for. Back in the early days of the internet, if you had told someone what social media was in the first place, they would say you're crazy.
Yeah.
Because that's insane. Who would want to digitally talk to people you couldn't see their face or even verify it as who they are? That sounds insane. And then not even be remotely close to them. Like, that's nuts.
Nobody
Back
would
then,
believe
no one
that.
knew.
Nobody would believe that people would be posting the things they're posting today on Facebook in the public.
I still don't believe it now.
I don't believe it
I
there.
think we're all
I think
digesting
we're
that.
So
But there's also a million more things done on the internet that nobody had any idea would ever be done on the internet 5 years into it being used in public.
Mhm.
PayPal was like, what is that? Right?
Yeah.
It's not technically a
Although,
thing.
Can one? Okay, so if we all have digital currency, if we all have digital currency, could you have? Could I write a blockchain to borrow from you and you, but not you and you?
Sure.
So if you're talking about Bitcoin and extending that to be able to do that, that can be done with something called side chains. Those are not ready to be implemented yet, but the theory behind it is pretty solid. You can sign complicated transactions that require IMAVIN signatures or IMAVIN participants to release the money. They want to program in the ability for there to be oracles. They wanted this in the beginning. Programs that will provably go out and see if the headline hit the news in the last 12 days. Or something has been, some quality, true or false, has been met, and that releases the funds.
Really?
So there are, they've been wanting to do that for a long time. I don't know how they're going to do it. Ethereum also wants to do it, but they are working towards that so that you can lose the middleman. You don't need an escrow service anymore. You don't need a centralized.
So
bank.
if the three of you had,
and the other things.
if the three of you had some sort of stored value, you had the most, you had the second most, and you had the lowest.
Of course.
Could I? But this is where it gets better. Could I choose? Could I have a block that chose to take your money first and give you the yield first?
You can.
Or
The answer is yes. You can have programmable money. You can have programmable agreements. You can
called smart contracts.
smart contracts.
So I would borrow from him first.
Yep.
And then until your wallet equals
So
his wallet.
you can do this with a regular legal contract. You just have to have a person enforcing it.
Yeah.
This is not a new thing. And
this-
this is a key thing that people
But it's
forget. Here's the thing people forget.
But with the blockchain, it can be
Without
free.
enforcement, it means
It's not
nothing.
totally free.
Yeah, without enforcement, it means nothing. So if I use Bitcoin, if I have let's say we have some new system, some blockchain, and I can prove that in that you decided to give me your car, that we did some transaction and I have your car now. And I find a way to get the money back. If you can't go to the cops, even if you can prove cryptographically that we agreed that it's now, that you get the money, I get the car, but now I have the money and the car, you need to be able to prove to someone to get the car back. Someone who has allowed on behalf of the state to commit violence on the behalf of the public, which is the police.
Bodies.
You need someone to force me to give the car back to you. And without that, it's meaningless.
You can also replace the force element that he's talking about with escrow functionality and with deposits.
Or you could teach the car to speak blockchain and make it shut itself down.
Yeah. So
I'm just wondering if it's possible.
This
like,
is
It's a
so.
test
Let's talk about the idea of cryptocurrency, because I think cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all that stuff seems kind of magical, or this. And I'll show this. This is a punch card from a place called 32 Shea. So they punched 3 coffees. If they punch the 10th coffee, then this becomes worth a cup of coffee. This is effectively money. You can think of these cryptocurrencies as like your rewards programs with your frequent flyer miles, your Starbucks, all that stuff starts to look like cryptocurrency that's tradable value. But it's valuable because we agree upon it, and I have some degree of trust that 32 Shea is going to be in business next week when I want to turn this in for a cup of coffee. If they go out of business, then this becomes worthless.
Yeah.
So there's a trust, but so these cryptocurrencies become like these rewards programs. Think of it like frequent flyer miles that start to become broad. If you threw your coffee rewards in with your frequent flyers, in with your, I don't know, points at Best Buy or whatever it is, and you start to make this basket, that starts to look like a cryptocurrency. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So if you're like a grocery chain, Fry's, you're gonna put all of your itemized purchases onto your Bitcoin wallet, and they have a cryptographic proof of your purchase history, basically.
Which, think of how valuable that is to
Exactly. Well, that's why they do. That's why they have those cards to begin with. But now
this, to me, having a security background, this is terrifying because the amount of it. So, for instance, we were just talking about this earlier. People think in this country, in the U.S., that you have a right to privacy. You do not. That is not in the Constitution. There is no law anywhere in the book saying you have a right to privacy. That's a thing in Germany. They have that in their laws. I think it got amended to their Constitution. That in Germany, you're literally guaranteed a right to privacy. So we have some weak guarantees like HIPAA that you mentioned, Health Information Privacy Protection Act, and HIPAA guarantees that your medical record, that information is safe. However, there's a huge caveat that most people aren't aware of. That only applies to medical information that was collected by a medical institution, whether that's a hospital, a doctor's office, or one of those insurance companies. So so I don't remember exactly who gets covered, but it's only if you tell me that you have a condition, any of you tell me you have a health condition, I'm not covered by HIPAA. I can tell anyone I want to. And if you look at Facebook and Google and some of the other data brokerages, then all they do is try to figure things out. And, oh, look, he went to the doctor's office, and then he went to the pharmacy an hour later, and he picked up a prescription for this drug that's used for these things. And when I cross-reference which drugs you have, I can figure out your entire medical history relatively trivially. And that's not protected under HIPAA. So when you start putting everything out there on this global ledger that's tied to your cryptographic key that initially can't be tied to you, but with a tiny bit of work, it's pretty trivial to tie it to you.
Right.
Now I can look at everything about you, and the privacy implications for using a blockchain like this are fucking terrifying. Because now I know everything you've ever done, every dollar you've ever spent, who it went to.
That, though, right?
What's that? Yeah.
Well,
there are some really big downsides. This is but one of these huge downsides that people, they'll never de-anonymize it. Bullshit. They have handwriting analysis software. We were looking at a really hilarious, they have a thing that I can pull up that's a Markov chain analyzer. So Markov chain is a way of trying to predict a text input when your phone says this is what's next. Markov chains are the technology that lets it do that. So this guy wrote a Markov chain writer, and he sucked in like all the bad reviews of LaGuardia Airport, and then it would suggest words, and he would choose one of several and write these hilariously just really negative reviews of JFK, and they're pretty funny. So they have software that does that and creates a set of Markov chains that basically comprise a fingerprint for the way you write. Right. So if you write some stuff and I don't know who you are, and you write some stuff and I don't know who you are, I can apply this analysis and compare the resulting Markov chains and see how similar they are. And I can de-anonymize. If you do something through Tor or whatever you post on WikiLeaks, I can, if it's enough text, I can look at the Markov chain analysis or even some more sophisticated techniques, and I can say, oh, that's definitely you. That was something you wrote.
Well,
So de-anonymizing the blockchain, people think, oh, that'll never happen. I call bullshit. That is way easier than anyone's guessing. It would be trivial for any data brokerage or more advanced entity to de-anonymize this.
Except-
a lot of this. So we're at the end of our time, gentlemen. Let's wrap it up. And
I'll leave the one other statement that I love to get in there. So blockchain is just like a square is a constrained rectangle. It's a rectangle where it has to have, every side has to be the same. Or you could say a parallelogram, a rectangle is a constrained parallelogram where the angles always have to be 90s. The way you can constrain that stuff, a square is less useful than any arbitrary rectangle or any arbitrary parallelogram. You can do different things with those shapes. They have properties that are useful. Same thing with blockchain. Blockchain is a constrained Merkle tree, which is a constrained Merkle DAG. And so anytime you're taking cryptographic signatures and pointing in one direction based on, oh, this signature, this subsequent block points back to this previous block, or you could even do set of blocks like Git does because it's a full Merkle DAG, then you get a lot of these properties of being able to verify it wasn't tampered with. And so, but with blockchain, you lose some of the flexibility you get in a Merkle tree or Merkle DAG because you can't point. It's just a long chain. And if two people branch, there's no way within Bitcoin, or I don't know if any other blockchains have a way of merging or rebasing on top of like Git does.
Bitcoin does that.
Can you rebase? Oh, I guess
It's lit. We're all including the same transactions. It's fine to merge.
Yeah.
The problem is who gets the mining rewards, which head ends up winning out.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about the partition stuff. So anyway, that's what IPFS is, a global DHT or decentralized hash table for kind of sharing Merkle DAGs, which is why I'm a lot more interested in it, because those Merkle DAGs have properties blockchains don't, because they're a more complex shape. And so that's a really cool project. There's some other ones out there.
This is all very new, all very experimental, and I think the opportunity set is large, whether you go with IPFS structure, Merkle DAGs, blockchains, whatever. But the cat's out of the bag in terms of pushing the power out to the peers, and I think that's the real revolution that's underway. So anybody have any last questions before we wrap
I have
it
a
up?
question. What is your, I assume you're leading this far.
Mm-hmm.
Is your drive ideological or business? That's
It's
one
both.
part of the question. The second is, well, is anyone here trying to make money out of it or get into the business or do a startup or what is?
He already did.
Strictly Bitcoin, though. I wouldn't say blockchain. I think the closest thing to blockchain would be people were they built sites that you could trade Bitcoin for other cryptocurrencies, and a lot of those were poorly programmed, and I stole all of the coins.
Well, the first time I heard about it was in financial area.
You say you stole all of them?
Stole every type of coin and then gave it back.
He gave it back and then he made money.
So-
by
Lots of
fixed
so-
problems. So
I think
altruistic.
most of us are definitely interested in making money in this, but it's different ways to make money than the traditional ways, because a lot of this is open source, a lot of it is transparent, so we have to be inventing new business models.
For it to be effective, it has to be ambitious. Otherwise, why put it on the blockchain?
Now,
Okay, but how do you see, like, for instance,
When
a
you say
bank, if you
ambitious-
look at, or one of the, if I look at it from a practical point of view, records, health records.
Mhm.
If you have a condition here, you fly tomorrow to Chicago, whatever, they'll redo the same test you had here. They're totally ignorant of all your past.
Right.
And there's a big security problem attached to your health care. There's HIPAA, there's here, there's that. But from a practical standpoint, it would be nice to have one copy of your health record and have all the security around it.
Mhm.
And signatures from the doctors on every single one of them.
Right. So my question, I guess, to the group is this going to disrupt the current method of doing things, or is something else going to sprout besides what is currently done, or which is basically
I think the answer is I think this will disrupt many of the current models. And what's being played with and what's on the table is, in many cases, counter to the existing rules and regulations. So part of the friction is it's going to take new business models. Part of the friction is this is going to have to be done in a way that at least acknowledges the existing sets of rules and regulations.
A good example is if I solved HIPAA today and built that blockchain.
I'm sorry, if you what?
If I solve the HIPAA problem today by building a blockchain, there's going to be a lot of special interest in shutting me down, suing me, and shutting me up.
Right.
So
Even if it's perfect.
So probably especially if it's perfect.
And so the regulators are looking at this and they're scratching their heads. They're going, well, how can these people be launching these initial coin offerings that look a lot like a stock offering and not be following all the
SEC rules.
all the regulatory rules? How can people be putting these records, their health records, on this blockchain and having multiple people have access to it? And how does that fit with the existing
Bitcoin's already
HIPAA?
weird. In the U.S., it's property. In some other countries, it's a currency.
Yeah,
And
they
in other
don't know.
currencies, they don't recognize it as anything. It's not taxable at all. It's monopoly money.
And if I send
Still.
cryptocurrency from the United States to India, am I now a money transfer agent? And do I have to comply with all the money transfer rules and
And
regulations?
how do you know you're not sending it to somebody in India? Because all you're sending it to is a cryptographic address. They could be anywhere on. They could be on the moon. As long as they get the blockchain up there.
Yeah. So there's disruption going on not only in the existing business models, but there's disruption going on in the existing and legacy regulations. And nobody really has the answers.
That's why I say in order to be effective, you have to be ambitious. You have to be willing to trample some previous thought methods of regulation because some of it just doesn't survive. It would not survive an era of the blockchain.
This goes to a bigger issue. So we did a podcast on Twitch, automate all the things.
Well, I'm going to shut this off because we're past time.
Sure.
So thank you for tuning in, and we will be having another monthly session, probably here at Gangplank on January the 25th at 7 p.m. So tune in then, and thanks for your time and your attention. Goodbye.